grifter, a term thrown around in politics quite a bit, especially in online media, and one that I've expressed to you before. I want to be really, really mindful of when I use it, because I think we can disagree so much, but still participate in our democratic debates as long as we accept that we're both coming at it in good faith. We both genuinely believe what we're saying, and possibly one or both of us are wrong in one or numerous ways. The second that you believe someone doesn't actually believe what they're saying in a debate, it's kind of all of a sudden meaningless, because how are you going to get them to thoughtfully engage with your points if they don't even believe their points? And that brings us to Dave Rubin on Piers Morgan Uncensored and Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks, who had a very explosive debate. Now, for you to understand this, I know some of you get upset when I have a really, really long intro before the clips, but there's important context. If you're not aware, Dave Rubin used to work at the Young Turks, was super progressive, and then slowly but surely slid his way all the way to being full-on pro-Trump. And I bring up that grifter point because I'm going to distinguish in a major way between a shift we're seeing with Cenk Uygur versus what we saw with Dave Rubin. It's something Cenk Uygur wants people to understand in the clip that you're about to watch. And I've told you that one of the few people I proudly describe as a grifter, meaning someone who probably doesn't genuinely believe all their stuff, and it doesn't make any sense that they would shift this radically in their political positions unless they were considering the money. And Rubin seemed to do something like that, or less so than money. I mean, it's attached to it, but just relevance. If he wasn't really making it on the left, and then slowly he got more and more accolades as he went to the right, that may have been the gravy train he was chasing. But Cenk Uygur, while he's going through something sort of wacky right now, I wouldn't describe him as such, and I'll make my case for that as we go along. While you watch, please do click the subscribe button, and if you don't exactly yet understand my thesis, just wait. I'll weave it through this segment.
Cenk, I mean, many people saying if you carry on down the road you're going in the last few weeks, you will be a fully fledged member of MAGA before we know it.
Yeah, there's absolutely no chance of that. I'm not like Dave Rubin, a giant sellout fraud
Wow.
who changed all of his positions and is totally useless, and it shouldn't even be on here. He's just a waste of space.
Wow. Really? After what all Dave said about coming together?
Yeah. Yeah, no, got no interest in coming together with utter frauds like Dave Rubin. So, brother, you telling me that when you were on the Young Turks, you were Mr. Progressive and you agreed with us 100%. Now, all of a sudden, you agree with Trump 100%. You're not saying something nuanced like we are. Hey, you know, when the guy gets shot at and he puts his fist up, that's courageous. When he does the McDonald's photo op and it works fine, no problem, right? If he wants to cut the Pentagon, great. Those are progressive positions. Anti-corruption, progressive position. Anti-war, progressive position. But you change all of your ideology overnight and you expect us to believe that that's real? I don't think it's real at all, and I want an apology from you for all the crazy, outrageous lies that you told about the Young Turks. When is that going to happen, huh? Wow. And when are you going to admit that you changed all your positions?
Yeah, and the way that Cenk alienates a lot of people, even separate from the current clash he's going through with the side that he's on, being the left, is he does speak very aggressively, right? Y'all know me, I'm always a little bit more soft in how I talk about stuff, but I think the underlying point there is one I resonate with about Dave Rubin, which is that I feel like when someone goes through that radical of a transformation, all the way from the left to the far right, as late in their life as Rubin did, you have to wonder two options. One, they didn't know anything when they were saying stuff before, so it was that easy, they're that malleable to switch around. Not to change position. I'm saying a complete and total principle value sprint in the opposite direction. Or there's something grifty going on, right? Whereas Cenk Uygur has also seemingly changed many positions recently, or at least his tone has changed. And I think the way he's talking about working with MAGA is extremely naive. And I think he's setting himself up to be used by MAGA, and they'll take him saying certain things about them and exploit it for their own cause, but have no interest in actually unifying on certain things. Maybe I'm wrong. That's my vibe. But that doesn't mean he thinks there's some epic way for him to make more money or have more notoriety by doing this. Whereas Dave Rubin, that's exactly what happened. He wasn't really making it. And then as he went more right wing, he got more and more notoriety for being the left guy who left the left. Let's continue forward.
For money, okay? Well, what position do you still have that's in
Cenk,
any
you
way
need
a
an
so-called
awfully-
classic liberal, you fraud?
Dave?
Piers, it's barely worth responding to this ridiculous buffoon who's the joke of the industry. But
yeah.
I will say this, Cenk, I haven't spoken to you in 10 years. I haven't,
Even right
I haven't
wingers
spoken
think
to
that
you
you're
in
a
10
total
years.
fraud.
I don't
You're
think
the
he's a
traitor
fraud
of
or a
the puppy
joke.
that
I think
they
Dave
have.
Rubin is, for what it's worth, I think Dave Rubin is one of the most influential and significant voices out there right now. And I
appreciate that.
admire his honesty
With
about the
right-wing or
journey he's been
left-wing,
on, Cenk.
none. He's a
Piers, I
universal
appreciate
joke.
that, but the thing is, what Cenk just proved is exactly what everyone in America, and I would say all over the world, is getting over. Nobody wants what he just offered up there. Not only does no one believe it, and he had it prepackaged and ready to go, and it's complete drivel. Yes, I sold out. It's so nonsensical. Again, Cenk, I'll gladly send you a signed copy of the book, and you can read all of my thoughts. And if you're anti-corruption and you're anti-war, you should be on the Trump train. But your endless hatred, the division that you sow, calling everyone racist and white supremacists, all of that stuff, it's why you're not respected. But I don't mean to get into the personal side of that. I'm talking about now something that culturally has shifted, and everyone can see the grift that you're up to, trying to sort of dance with the thing, but it's just not necessary. And
By the way, before going further, it's wild that Dave would say about Cenk Uygur it's a grift, when if it is a grift, it would be the same grift that Dave Rubin did. He said you're trying to sort of dance. He didn't say the rest of the sentence because it would sound too much like him, but you're trying to dance with the right in this grifty way was what he was accusing Cenk of. But if that's what Cenk's guilty of, he's guilty of that tenfold because he just became a full-on Trump cheerleader after pretending for a while to be a progressive and then centrist and then right-wing. And I want to say, because I know some in the comments will say, Cenk said this recently, that recently. I haven't kept up a bunch with it, but I've come across clips. I'm like, what the heck's going on over there at the Young Turks? But I think we have to just, as a default, stop jumping to number one, eating each other alive, and number two, assuming bad faith. Now, there are things I've seen Cenk, especially recently, say that are genuinely wrong. I think he's being genuine and he's wrong. Outrageous, even. But that's different than being disingenuously wrong. And disingenuously wrong is I don't need you in the conversation type person. But I can engage with someone who I think is genuinely incorrect. Like his belief that he's going to work with MAGA on things that I don't think they have any serious dedication to working on. Dave Rubin, when I've seen him in interviews, even with friend of the show, David Pakman, and others, many that he stopped doing for this reason, it comes through so clearly that he's just making it up as he goes along. And that is very, very different. Very different.
and I don't think that many people will buy it.
Well, Cenk, let me put to you, Cenk, something
can
that
I
Laura.
just address
Hang on, Cenk.
Hold
Hang
on,
on,
hold on.
Cenk. Hang on. I'm gonna read you something just to see your reaction. But Laura Loomer called you out on X, as you know, and she said this: "You are the radical."
All right, and then reads this whole thing from Laura Loomer. Laura Loomer is crazy. She's a good example. I think she's genuinely insane. I think she's genuinely insane. Not a grift, insane. and that's a distinguishment we should make. So that we know when we should even argue, even call someone out. But if someone's just playing a character, why call them out? What's the point?
Point.
Piers,
Then I'll go to Dave Smith.
Listen, yes. When this country desperately needs to unite against the establishment on things we all agree on. So things like all the populists hate corruption. All the populists hate war. By the way, Dave doesn't. Dave will demand that we start every war for Israel and pay for all of Israel's war. So he's been establishment on that all along. But when you go to say, hey, can we get an agreement on things that we agree on? the left pushes back because they're so afraid. They got traumatized by the Dave Rubins in the world. They're like, oh, if you take one step.
Hey, by the way, why can't Piers Morgan's staff turn down the audio of people trying to talk over me when I'm on? Every time their mics are loud as hell when I'm trying to talk and they're interrupting me. But now they have Dave essentially muted. This is awesome. He's just talking, but we can't hear him.
Not even in their direction. If you allow the right wing to take a step in our direction, they're worried that you're going to be a fraud like Dave Rubin and change all of your positions overnight. So my friends on the left, do not get scarred by this fraud of a man. There are other people like Dave Smith, who
let me bring in Dave
is a
Smith.
libertarian.
Right.
We disagree on other issues.
Let me bring in Dave Smith.
But we can actually unite on the things that we care about.
Right. Let me bring in Dave Smith.
In order to unite, you got to get past the frauds like Dave Rubin.
All right. Dave.
So not to plug one of my own appearances, but that's exactly what I'm going to do. You can go back, even just on my channel, I've covered it, because Dave Rubin's in the thumbnail, and see my coverage of me talking back and forth with Dave Rubin during one of these things. And I think if you don't know who he is, you'll get a sense of what is so dishonest about Rubin, because it's not that you say something that is opposed to what I say. A bunch of people do that. Even I have a family member who disagrees with my stance on how much I think we should support Ukraine, but they're coming at it in good faith, not because they just hate Ukraine like a lot of these MAGA people we talked about in the Lauren Boebert segment, it being so irrational, but instead a little bit more level-headed. And then we disagree and we debate about it, but that's fine. So it's not that. It's when you are obviously engaging disingenuously, which is so destructive, which is why it is a fixation of mine, is calling people out who are being disingenuous. If you're being genuine and you're terrible, all right, we can deal with that, because at least you know that I'm saying things I believe in, I know you're saying things you believe, and then we can go back and forth. But the second it's realized to be a grift or for money or for the sake of being provocative, now it's just so much less interesting or valuable or productive. One thing, by the way, that I think the TYT and Anna Kasparian, I think, is having an even more shocking transformation. We talked more about that on the bonus show. You can get access to it by clicking on the join button below. We've followed that a little bit more closely there for the members. But Cenk, I think what happens is, and I see how this drives people crazy, social media, it really does incentivize the most insane voices, right? And that's why I appreciate a lot of the people that I respect who are doing really well in this space come at it much more level-headedly, and a lot of you support that, and that's so necessary. Because if you don't consciously try to find the more reasonable voices, then engagement sells. And so you'll have just ridiculous, unrepresentative of a side type figures that get so much attention and garner so many clicks, and it's not really adding something productive because they're not really representative of the side we're arguing with or of our side, but then either side is judging each other by that. It's one of the reasons I always say that we should focus on people in positions of power so we know we're talking about something relevant and not irrelevant social media doing what social media does. But what will happen with some of these figures, like the Young Turks, is they get in this feedback loop where I remember I heard Cenk shouting about how the left wants to release all criminals and we just want to celebrate criminals and the victims we don't care about. And it's like, is someone in his comments articulating some super wacky, super far left view that makes him feel that way? Maybe. And then that becomes the obsession, and sort of those loud voices radicalize you. And then you're acting in a reactionary way where you'll abandon some of your positions because you want to oppose the extreme part of your side, which sends you to the extreme part of the other side. Hasn't yet happened completely with Cenk Uygur, I'm not saying that, but with a lot of these folks. And so that's why I try to emphasize relevant figures to make sure I'm not falling for that, falling for an unrepresentative sample causing me to be reactionary. Because yeah, if I go look through every one of my YouTube comments or look through all my Twitter DMs, I'm going to find someone who's going to say something, and they're on my side, that's very hurtful and makes me doubt the, members of my audience. But whenever I look at it more a more zoomed out perspective at the much larger percentage of my audience that gets the points I'm making. Whenever I get onto something more nuanced, they get it, but they're just not the type of people who are going to write in a hate email for it because they're just like, yeah, this is good. I'm not going to go write, okay, I appreciated that. Then I'm brought back to earth. And I don't think some of the people in this space do that enough, making sure they're engaging with their whole audience instead of letting little arguments with like 1% of their audience spin them out of control and then sprint the other direction. And I think that's what's happening here with the Young Turks a little bit. But at least I do believe Cenk is trying to come at it in good faith, however wrong he may be on certain things. Whereas Dave Rubin seems to be playing a character. And that's really unfortunate. And it's what has sent him to being just a full-on Trump propagandist. Tell me your thoughts. I know a lot of my audience might not agree with everything I just said, but we can do that. We can engage. It's beautiful in the comments, and then support the show if you want to by clicking that join button below.